Hi, everybody, and welcome to Exegetically Speaking, a podcast of the friends and faculty of Wheaton College, Wheaton, Illinois, and the Lanier Theological Library in Houston, Texas. My name is David Capes, and I am the Senior Research Fellow at the Lanier Theological Library and a former dean up there in Wheaton at the School of Biblical and Theological Studies. Our purpose in these podcasts is really very simple. We want to promote the study of biblical languages, Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, so we can read the Bible more faithfully, study it more fully, and not just read it, but to live it. Hey, joining us today on Exegetically Speaking once again is the Department Chair for Modern and Classical Languages, Dr. Jon Laansma, who is also the Gerald Hawthorne Professor of New Testament Greek and Exegesis there at Wheaton College. Dr. Jon Laansma, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah. Thanks for being my colleague in crime up there and at Wheaton and helping us to get this thing done. You have done an amazing amount of work, you and Ian Rosine and Rebecca Larson as well, to help us with this project.
It's a team effort.
It really is, isn't it? I mean, all over, it's a team effort. And we've had some great results. When I was at SBL, people were stopping me on escalators and elevators and lobbies and saying, hey, I listened to that Exegetically Speaking thing. I'd love to be on sometime, So it was fun. It was great. Hey, as department chair, I know you don't get a chance to do a whole lot of your own research and work, but I understand you're working on 1 Corinthians right now.
Yep, in the background, and hopefully more and more as the summer comes and I end as department chair, I can go back to my preferred life of teaching and research.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll have a time to breathe again and not have the heavy-duty responsibilities. But I hope you're going to continue to help us with this podcast.
Oh, yes. That is absolutely the plan. This is fun.
Yeah, good. Well, we like having you on here. So today we're going to talk about 1 John, chapter 3, verses 6 and 7, but mainly verse 7. So set that up for us. What's going on in there?
Well, by way of setup, first of all, I'm drawing this from a Greek exegesis Sunday school class I teach, if you can believe that.
Wow, okay.
At our home church, we've had this going for over 4 decades.
Wow. Now, do the people in the Sunday school class know Greek?
Some. It's not a
requirement.
That would be too intimidating. Our numbers would be even smaller. It's a class where you can come and hear the text talked about. And the idea is that it broadens the conversation because of the things we can talk about rather than narrows it. And in all the years we've had that class, it's never handled 1 John, probably because the Greek of 1 John is considered to be so easy.
Okay.
Beneath us. Even if the Greek is easier, the text is important. There's a lot of things in there worth talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
So just for example, we're talking about verse 7, but in verse 6, you get this statement of John, everyone who abides in him, who remains in him. And then uk hamartane. And the question is even how to translate it. Doesn't sin, doesn't continue to sin, doesn't practice sin. Simple present active indicative third person singular verb. And I don't want to get bogged down in that one, even though it's one of the harder questions.
Well, and people do a lot of theologizing around that, right? And saying that, okay, now that I am in Christ and abiding, I don't ever sin anymore. Well, really?
I just love it. It sounds like he's saying.
Yeah.
And so there's different, is he talking about a particular kind of sin? They don't do that. The great eschatological apostasy, they don't involve themselves in that, or some other particular kind. Is he talking about a particular class of people? Monastics is the perfect, but not all Christians. Is he talking about ongoing practicing of sin? I mean, these are all possibilities, ways of dealing with it.
Sure.
I think, to make short work of it, I think he's jumping ahead in just making a categorical statement about what will be true, and in a sense already is now true, of those who are in Christ. In the new creation, if we sleep, we won't have to wake up one day worrying that it's all going to fall down today because somewhere somebody's going to repeat the history of Adam.
Oh, that's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah.
As he says later on in these verses, they're not able to sin. There will be perfect freedom, which means the freedom, not kind of the philosopher's freedom to sin or not sin, but the perfect freedom to do righteousness perfectly.
Mm, mm. Which is a great setup for what the next verse is saying. Now, scholars have called this sometimes realized eschatology, that the eschaton is even present back into this age that we're living in.
Yeah. And in a sense, that's clearly true, the already not yet idea.
Mm.
And John is just trading on that. But in his style, he's stating things absolutely, both by way of assurance. That's a very reassuring thing to hear.
Mm-hmm.
By way of challenge for us and challenge for the false teachers. But that does bring us to verse 7, where he says, "Children, don't let no one deceive you." And then again, the one who does righteousness is righteous. Ha poion tein dikaios sunain dikaios estin. Just as that one is righteous.
Mm.
And here again, the language, the vocabulary, the grammar is pretty simple, but the question is, what exactly does he mean? Why does he say this?
Mm-hmm.
There are good interpreters who think that maybe among John's opponents were those who claimed to be dikaios, who claimed to be righteous, but it was more of a club membership, formal thing.
Yeah.
And John wants to oppose that with the idea that no, the people who deserve to be called the dikaios, the righteous ones, are those who actually practice righteousness. Now, I want to say immediately that could be what John means.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to point out that's not strictly what the grammar of the sentence says. Now, grammar is made for communication, not communication for grammar. So I don't want to push that too very hard. But what you got is a copulative verb, and you're going to have two nominative case, verb, subject case.
So let me back up. For those who don't know what a copulative verb is, what is that?
The to be verb.
The verb to be. Okay.
In English, it's proper to say it is I instead of it is me. The subject case I instead of the object case. And so likewise in Greek, you're going to have two basically subject case words. In this case, substantival participle, the one who does is nominative, and then the adjective dikaios, righteous, is nominative. And the question is, what's the subject? And there's basic principles to sort that out. One is articular, one is a pronoun, one is a proper name, and rules like that. And in terms of those rules, the subject of the sentence is the one who does righteousness is righteous. Now, the underlying principle of those rules is that the known quantity is the subject, and then something is predicated of it.
Mm-hmm.
So in this sentence, the one who does righteousness, what's predicated of that is that person is righteous. If he had wanted to say what some of those interpreters want him to say, it would have been the opposite. The righteous person, that would be the subject, is the one who does righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the strict grammar has it the other way around. The one who does righteousness is righteous. Could be he means the other thing anyway, but I think he means what he says. But that still leaves a question of in what sense does he mean they're righteous?
Mm-hmm.
There could be the kind of tautologist sense. The one who does righteousness is a righteous person in behavior. They would be viewed as righteous. Marvel movie where Thor is going to stand in the way of a heavy beam of light and someone warns him, if you do that, it will kill you. And he says, only if I die. And the other person, yes, that's what it means to kill you. So,
yeah, exactly.
But I suspect in this flow of thought, he means something a bit more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Because in verses 8 and following, the question really settles on what he says in verse 10. By this is manifest who are the children of God and who are the children of the devil. Claim the parentage of whom.
Yes.
And that's what he means by dikaios in verse 7, when he says the one who does righteousness is righteous, is that they are righteous in their identity. They are righteous in their being. They're righteous in their character. It's like the language of Jesus in Matthew 7. Good fruit comes from a good tree. Be good down to its roots, and you will get good fruit from it. And I suspect that's what he means here. So the strict sense is, the grammar is the one who does righteousness is righteous, and what he means by righteous. Again, thinking eschatologically, again, thinking like he did in verse 6 of ultimate claims. There is no darkness in them.
Mm-hmm.
They have been made without remainder righteous. righteous.
Interesting, yeah. And part of that, as I'm looking at this, that last phrase in verse 7, even as or just as kathos ikenos, just as that one, referring to Jesus, is righteous.
Right.
And I'm wondering if there could be a causal idea to that kathos there, in as much as that one is righteous.
I think there could be. He just got done saying in verses 1-3, we're now children of God. What we will be has not yet been manifested. But we know that when he's manifested, we will be like him because we will see him kathos estin.
Ah, yes.
As he is. So that causal idea could carry over here into verse 7.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, very good. So that identity becomes very strong and just a very important part of what that text is about, I think.
And interestingly, this doesn't prove that that's the right interpretation, but I happen to be teaching a class on the Apostolic Fathers, Greek reading in the Apostolic Fathers. So I was reading in Ignatius's letter to the Ephesians in chapter 14. And he makes a statement in chapter 14, no one who professes faith hamartanes, sins. It's a similarly unqualified claim. Neither does one who possesses love hate. And then his very next thought is the tree is manifest from its fruit. As there was kind of in his own mind, a natural collocation of that idea of a good tree bearing good fruit with this categorical claim that the one who is genuine simply does not sin. Again, that tensions for us in the present, but it's incredibly reassuring for our ultimate hope and hopefully productively challenging for the present.
Indeed. Jon, great word. Thanks for being with us today on Exegetically Speaking.
Yep.
Thanks to Ian Rosine, Rebecca Larson, and Silvio Vasquez, who help us produce this podcast. Thanks as well to Jon Laansma, our Wheaton-based director, who makes this podcast possible. We're grateful to Phil Keggy for our music. If you want to study biblical languages, then you need to consider Wheaton College. Whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate student, we have amazing programs, a first-rate faculty, and some of the best students in the world. So go to the website, www.wheaton.edu, and look for modern and classical languages. Get started today. If you have questions about this or any of our podcasts, we'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions or questions about any passage in the Hebrew Bible or Greek New Testament, send us an email and we'll see if we can get one of our experts to weigh in on that for you. Our email is exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. That's exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. Thanks for listening.